What year did you start your organ procurement journey?
1968, up in Minnesota.
Do you remember your first patient?
I think it was a 6-year-old child, drowning victim in Duluth, Minnesota. And it was wintertime. And we tried to fly up to Duluth, but we couldn't because of weather, so we had to drive to Duluth to do the procedure. So I think that was my first.
Wow. And how many patients total have you worked on?
Between 5,000 and 7,000.
On average, how many organs are donated every year?
About 14,000 organ donors in the United States.
And how many more organs do you need each year to help everyone?
Well, the last time I looked at the list, the size of the list, there was 144,000 people waiting. Of that 144,000, half were kidney patients. And dialysis can keep a person alive for a long period of time to get a transplant. Mm-hmm. Patients waiting for lung, heart, liver, when they go critical, they go fast. So you either have to get them transplanted or they die on the list. Mm-hmm. So the list stays pretty stable. Yeah. Okay. But we need more help.
Which is the most difficult organ to retrieve?
It's the pancreas. The pancreas is a delicate organ, and it produces insulin and enzymes for digestion. And it's a tender organ. In fact, they tell surgical residents their first day is don't mess with the pancreas. Because if you throw that pancreas into pancreatitis, mm-hmm. it could kill the patient.
Oh my God.
Okay? So we now have to remove the whole thing out for the transplanting the recipient. Mm-hmm. So we have to handle it much more than you usually would. But it's very successful.
So if the pancreas is the most difficult organ to retrieve, what's the easiest?
The heart is the easiest. And that's because the vessels are very large, and it's easy to sew in.
So how many people does it take for the organ to be retrieved and then placed into a new recipient?
It takes about 20 to 30 professionals mm-hmm. to do the whole process. That's the donor operation, the donor preservation before harvest, talking to family members, getting permission from the medical examiner. All those details have to be done before we can take the patient to the operating room.
Interesting. And what is the typical life expectancy for the patients with a new organ?
That depends on which organ.
Oh.
For a kidney, chances are 93% that you'll still have a functioning kidney mm-hmm. at 1 year.
Okay.
The liver runs about 55%.
Okay.
And the other organs in between.
And how do you know if the organ is going to match with its intended recipient?
You take tissue typing. And tissue typing is finding the antigens or proteins mm-hmm. that are on the cell wall surface. And they're just like your knuckles. Okay? So if you match these up between a donor and recipient, it's less likely that you're going to have an immune response against the kidney. Mm-hmm. And, it's very interesting, the whole process of getting matched.
What scientific breakthrough would push an organ procurement into having no one left on the list?
Organ preservation would be a big item. We lose too many organs because we don't have the preservation time. Mm-hmm. And that's tragic right there in itself. Having other ways of dealing with still the rejection problems. Our drugs now are quantum leap over what we were using years ago. And it's so good that you're pretty much assured of successful transplant. There's still hurdles, there's still some problems, a few patients who have to deal with rejection, but it's nothing like it used to be.
So how long does a typical organ last after someone is deceased?
It's also dependent on the organ. Mm-hmm. Heart, you need to have right away. That has to be within minutes of death.
Minutes,
yeah.
okay.
If it's a brain dead case, then that you can extend that out, the time period,
For how long?
for, as long as the heart is usable in the donor,
Okay.
okay? So they do all the mechanics in the background to get the organ transplanted. By the time you recover the organ, then you can immediately transplant it, okay? Livers are good for 18 hours,
Okay.
but ideally you want them in the recipient within 12 hours.
Within 12 hours.
Yeah, that gives the best results, okay? Kidneys can go 3 days
Okay.
on ice, okay? Now, when you do a lot of ice preservation, there will be what's called delayed graft function, which the kidney is transplanted and it doesn't work right away. And it may be 2 or 3 days before it starts working.
And is that how they preserve the organs, on ice?
Yeah, you can machine perfuse organs, or you can put them on ice, okay? Machine preservation of organs is better, but it's more difficult to transport.
Why?
Size,
Okay.
where you generally end up sending kidneys on a machine in charter jets, which gets to be quite expensive, you know. But they can have kidneys in one place on the machine, take it off the machine, put it in ice, get it to the recipient center, and they will put it back on the machine, and then that extends the life of the kidney.
Is it a special kind of cooler or like a lunchbox?
Playbox, a playpan.
Playpen?
Yeah, that's when you send it on ice. Okay, it's a styrofoam or sometimes a plastic container, mostly styrofoam boxes that you
Interesting.
can store organs in and ship them in that.
What is the most difficult aspect of organ procurement?
Donor families and the pain that they are having, they're demonstrating, the crying, the absolute sad situation that they're in, and there's nothing they can do about it, and it's just horrible for them. So if you could go into the family and work with them and give them the option of organ donation, and they then will focus on the benefit of the death and not just the death. And that helps them tremendously. Okay? Recipients also have extended families, and everybody knows about it, and that type of thing. But the donor family has these families that donate organs are the best people in the world. They are just so precious. It's hard. It's hard to sit and watch them grieve, and just trying to establish a rapport with them so they could understand what you're talking about when we bring them the options of organ donation. And that's hard. It takes a special person to be able to go and talk to donor families.
Is it easier for the family to cope if the donor already checked off the box to donate the organ?
That is so good. I mean, that takes the pressure off the family as to what the patient would want to do. Okay, so having that donor card is gold. Okay, very, very few families will go against donation if the patient has a donor card.
And the donor card is where exactly?
It's on your driver's license.
Okay.
Okay, so obviously for small children, you have to have the parents' consent.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, obviously. But these families that go through such grief and come out in a better place if they donate the organs.
What happens to the organs if they fail or the recipient does not accept the organ?
Well, very few recipients reject the organ.
Oh.
They're waiting, they're on the list, they're waiting for that call, that life-saving call, they're waiting for it. And one of the problems we have is that we'll have a recipient who wants the organ so badly, they'll come in in the operating room, to the hospital to be admitted, and he's got a high white count. He's got a fever. He's got other infections going on,
Right.
and he can't be transplanted.
Okay.
So now we have to look for another recipient to come in to receive the organ. Okay, so they're desperate to get the organ, so
Right.
they'll go and they'll say that, well, I feel just fine, when indeed they don't.
So if they have something going on that prevents them from having the transplant, are they next in line to get the next organ?
No, there is no line for organs. A donor properties are fed into a computer, and they measure the recipient properties and the donor properties, and like tissue typing, blood grouping, all that, before they're actually selected to be on the list, and they list them patient 1 through 10. So on one donor, you may be patient 3. The next donor, you may be patient 87.
Wow.
Okay?
Right.
So there is no 1, 2, 3 type of thing.
So it's according to tissue type.
Just tissue typing and preservation, matching, and how long they've been on the list, and that's all taken on an issue.